Everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started. As people are trickling in, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to hear where you're calling in from, what organization you're associated with. We will go ahead and get started here. All right, so thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining us for our webinar on local sourcing innovations in independent and locally owned grocery stores. My name is Ryle Carver, and I'm the program director for the Rural Grocery Initiative. For the past 2 years, our team has been digging into this topic, and we're excited to share our final results with you today. We've got a lot to cover, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to acknowledge that this project was completed as part of a cooperative agreement between the Rural Grocery Initiative at Kansas State University and USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service. And a few housekeeping items to get us going. So this session is being recorded, and we will post this on our website and share out to all registered attendees. And we are planning to have some time towards the end of our hour together for Q&A. So please submit your questions to the Q&A feature. We'll use that to monitor questions and facilitate the Q&A at the end of our time. And all right, I think we can go ahead and move into our content. Let's get started. So first, some context as to why the Rural Grocery Initiative is interested in this topic. The Rural Grocery Initiative was established in 2007 after completing a series of listening sessions that identified rural grocery stores as a top concern. The Rural Grocery Initiative aims to sustain locally owned rural grocery stores, and we do that in a variety of ways through technical assistance, through maintaining and growing our online resource library that includes case studies and fact sheets and guidebooks, through research projects like this local sourcing project, through programming like our National Rural Grocery Summit, and as a partner supporting the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative, a financing arm of our work. We do all this because we know that rural grocery stores are anchor institutions, and without them, communities lose out on economic, health, and cultural benefits. Unfortunately, there are a multitude of challenges that stack up against locally owned independent grocery stores. One of the challenges that is critical to understand is the industry itself. The grocery business runs on razor-thin net profit margins, typically falling between 1 and 3%, meaning that for every dollar in sales that a grocery store brings in, 1 to 3 cents is what that store can put back into the store, invest back into the store. 97 to 99 cents go towards covering labor and overhead and costs of goods. On top of that, grocers are facing high operating costs due to aging infrastructure and lack of buying power, declining community populations, increased competition with dollar stores and supercenters, as you can see from the chart on the right of this slide, and challenges accessing wholesale distributors, making it difficult to stock their shelves. And this is where local sourcing can play a role. So locally owned grocery stores that are sourcing locally are able to both harness a competitive edge by showing their commitment to their local community while also differentiating themselves from their competitors. A management consulting firm, A.T. Kearney, found that 78% of consumers said they're willing to pay more for local products throughout the store, meaning it can drive sales into the store. Grocery stores can provide stable and flexible outlets for producers, often consistent demand with less red tape compared to national brands. And for grocers that are too small to access wholesale minimums, focus on local producers can be a viable alternative to stock their shelves and supply their store. And so local food has an important role to play in building resilience for both grocers and producers. To that end, the Rural Grocery Initiative and AMS teams sought to learn more and discover what lessons can be learned from innovative local sourcing models that could help locally owned independent and rural groceries become better integrated into local and regional supply chains. There was a huge team that supported this effort. The Rural Grocery Initiative and AMS team represented the core implementation team for the work for the project. However, we worked with a project advisory committee that supported us throughout the project. We shared progress with them and received feedback as we moved through this research study. There were 4 phases to the project. We first started out by confirming our project goals and identifying our advisory committee. We then solicited examples of innovative local sourcing models, and some of you on the call may have contributed to that call. We received over 40 examples from across the country. And from there, we whittled our list down to 5 unique models that we thought warranted further explanation. For each model, we then completed interviews with between 2 and 4 individuals that were connected to the model, understood the operations and the history, and used that to then develop our findings, which included a variety of final deliverables. So for each model, each of our 5 models, we developed a diagram of the flow of local food through the system. And these diagrams were then incorporated into our 5 case studies. Each case study included background and context, the origin story, details on the operations, the growth and evolution of the model, as well as impacts, key innovations, challenges, and lessons learned. We also compiled key characteristics from each model into a comparison chart and a final report. The local sourcing innovations catalog that we used to launch this project is still active, and contributions can be submitted to the Rural Grocery Initiative team. More on that a little bit later. Today, we will have time to briefly introduce each model that we studied and highlight their key innovation. If you'd like to follow along as we are talking through each of these models, all final deliverables are available at the QR code on the bottom right of this slide, and we will also put the direct link into the chat. I am now going to pass it on to my colleagues Erica Blair and Clara Meisenhelter to discuss each of these 5 models. And Erica is going to start off with farm runners. So Erica, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ryle. And thank you all so much for being here. It's really awesome to see such a great turnout and so much interest in this topic. We had a lot of fun researching all of these different businesses and organizations, and they are totally inspiring and amazing. So I'm really excited that we get to share with you kind of highlights from these different models. And as Ryle mentioned, we're only able to provide a brief overview today. So if any of these models really pique your interest, I definitely encourage you to go to each of the case studies and do a deeper dive and read through those. But what we're going to do is start off with Farm Runners. So Farm Runners is an independently owned local food distribution company that was started in 2015. It's located in the small town of Hotchkiss, which is in the western slope of Colorado. It's also based in the North Fork Valley, which has a very high concentration of organic growers, I think the highest in the state of Colorado. And Farm Runners was started by a young couple that realized that all of the farmers in their area were really struggling with the same thing, which was distribution. The farmers were spending a ton of time out on the road trying to get to grocery stores and restaurants. And so they decided that they would start this company and provide this service to farmers. So this couple, Emma and Matthew, started out by just purchasing local product from farmers that they knew, and then they would go around and try to find people who would buy it. And they slowly built up their customer base by visiting different institutions, establishments like restaurants and grocery stores, and providing samples of food. And so their business slowly grew over time. And in 2017, they were able to purchase a 2,400 square foot gas station in downtown Hotchkiss, which they converted to use as an aggregation facility. But soon enough, they realized that a lot of community members were also really interested in purchasing local product. So whatever farm runners had excess from wholesale customers, they would sell at their aggregation facility. And they started something called the Friday Friend Store. That ultimately became so popular that they ended up making their own grocery store and deli called The Station. So, and we can go to the next slide. Um, so the business supplies both organic and conventional food produced within a 200-mile radius of Hotchkiss. In 2024, farm runners distributed local food from over 100 farmers to 450 chefs, 60 grocery stores, 3 food hubs, 2 school districts, and their own grocery store, The Station. Wholesale customers account for about 75% of business income, and retail customers account for the rest. Um, their their grocery store, The Station, has expanded their product selection beyond what they can source locally. So they do also order from a national distributor and a regional distributor, but still about 80% of their products in this store are sourced locally. So we were really interested in featuring farm runners in this project because we know that distribution is a huge challenge and a real need if we want to continue to grow the local food system. Farm Runners has really helped fill that gap in their region. And it's a business that has slowly grown over time. They started out with just one vehicle making deliveries, and today they have a fleet of 5 trucks. The next model that we highlighted in this project is Rolling Grocer. So Rolling Grocer is a nonprofit grocery store based in Hudson, New York, and it was established in 2018. And the context for the store is also pretty important. There's a pretty large wealth disparity in the city of Hudson compared to the rest of the county. So food access and transportation is a real challenge for a lot of residents in Hudson. Several local nonprofit organizations in the community decided to work together and address this issue. And after doing some really extensive outreach and information gathering with community members, they decided that they would open a grocery store. So they started out with a mobile market as a way to meet the immediate food access needs in their community, but ultimately decided that a brick and mortar store was a better long-term solution. So that brick and mortar store opened in 2019. They kept the name Rolling Grocer because they still do quite a bit of distribution across different parts of their community. The store is really committed to selling organic food and local food, and that can be more expensive. So they also established a fair pricing system to make this high quality food more accessible to low income residents. And so that's what we wanted to hone in on for this case study. So the fair pricing system is similar to a sliding scale. It has 3 different tiers. The blue tier receives at cost pricing. So that means the store essentially breaks even on those items. The orange tier receives discounted pricing. So the store is getting about a 25% profit margin on those items. And the green tier receives standard pricing, selling at a 40% profit margin. So shoppers enroll in the system at the register. They only have to do it once. They select their payment tier, which is based on household size and combined household income. There isn't any income verification required, and customers are welcome to change their tier at any time they wish. When customers come back to the store, they only need to give their last name when checking out, and the point of sale system will automatically adjust prices for them. So in 2024, there were 1,700 customers enrolled in this system, with about 60% of customers receiving subsidized pricing. And that same year, they also purchased from 50 local producers. So that's the overview of Rolling Grocer, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Clara now to talk about our next case study.
Thank you, Erica. So our next case study takes us to Webb in Tallahatchie County, Mississippi. Tallahatchie County is home to many small-scale farmers who grow a wide variety of produce, including watermelon, cantaloupe, tomatoes, okra, bell pepper, sweet potatoes, corn, and more. Despite this, the context is important again. Food access remains a challenge in the community. For decades, there was only one grocery store in the entire 645 square mile county, forcing many residents to drive over 20 miles to reach fresh food and grocery staples. The lack of retail outlets also meant that local farmers had fewer marketing opportunities for their products. So Marquitris Mangum, a fourth-generation farmer who grew up in the area, saw how the livelihood of local farmers was inseparable from the community's overall well-being. She had this vision of simultaneously building the capacity and know-how of local farmers while establishing retail markets where they could sell products, expand their revenue streams, and become more financially sustainable. To make this vision a reality, in 2017, Mangum launched In Her Shoes, a 501c3 nonprofit based in the rural town of Webb, Mississippi, with the goal of creating economic stability, promoting self-sufficiency, and improving quality of life. In 2018, In Her Shoes developed its Farm Business Enhancement Program, which provides technical assistance and trainings to help beginner and intermediate level farmers. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Then in 2022, In Her Shoes created Farmacy Marketplace, a nonprofit grocery store located in Webb, to create another opportunity for local farmers to market local products and improve their business sustainability. While Farmacy Marketplace's brick and mortar store in Webb has temporarily closed after the publication of our case studies, as they are exploring a more sustainable store format option, their mobile grocery store called Farmacy Mobile is still operational out of Mount Bayou and being used to do an assessment of communities to determine what part of the model they can implement. Next slide, please. So this slide dives deeper into that key innovation of developing the Farm Business Enhancement Training Program that I mentioned earlier to build that pipeline of local food suppliers. So In Her Shoes focuses on supporting beginner specialty crop producers because they often lack the experience and know-how to integrate into retail outlets and to scale their businesses. So participants in this program must have fewer than 10 years of experience to join. And throughout the program, farmers attend workshops and receive one-on-one technical assistance on a wide range of topics. Initially, the curriculum focused only on the production methods. However, participant feedback revealed a need for business planning support too. So the course now includes workshops on business plan development, incorporating it as a business, financial management, navigating USDA programs, marketing and promotion, and more. In Her Shoes even contracts with a graphic designer to make logos for the students. Helping farmers integrate into new markets is of critical importance. So the program offers trainings on food safety standards and GAP certification that may be required by retailers. And because many participating farmers only have experience selling direct to consumer, they also spend time discussing pricing strategies for different markets, including wholesale and retail. So I'll pass it back to Erica now to review our next case study.
Thank you. So now we're headed over to Michigan to take a look at Farm to Freezer. And so Farm to Freezer is a for-profit company that was established in 2014. And the company freezes local product from small and mid-sized farmers. And then that product is sold to grocery stores, schools, restaurants, hospitals, and so on. And another kind of important piece of context for this case study is that Michigan, as a lot of you probably know, ranks second nationally in terms of agricultural diversity. And so Michigan produces over 300 commodities. And that makes it a state that is highly, highly agriculturally productive. Like a lot of other Midwestern states, Michigan has a pretty short growing season. And so when it's not the growing season, it can be difficult to find local food. So by freezing local product, the company is able to extend the availability of local food year round. The initiative started out pretty small in Northwest Michigan. Then they found that there was so much demand for frozen local food. They were able to expand and reach a new customer base. So now they have processing facilities in Detroit and Grand Rapids. Next slide. So this company we were quite interested in. It's innovative in terms of its size and the type of farmers that they're able to work with. So traditional processors will typically work with really large volumes and are freezing between 100,000 to 200,000 pounds of product per run. Farm to freezer, on the other hand, has the capability to do much smaller runs, which means small and mid-sized farmers have this opportunity to have their product processed. They don't have to have such enormous volumes. So one example that they gave is garlic scapes. Garlic scapes can be really difficult to process, and you can only do 2,000 pounds at a time. Farm runners will be able to work with farmers on that scale, whereas some of the larger processors probably wouldn't work with such a low volume. Another really interesting, innovative thing about farm to freezer is that they are really connected with their wholesale customers. A lot of food manufacturers will treat distributors as their primary customers, but farm to freezer still has a direct relationship with the grocery stores and schools and restaurants that are ultimately selling their products to the public. Farm to freezer also provides independent grocery stores with a small merchandising freezer that is located in the produce section. So rather than having their product with the other frozen foods, farm to freezers frozen berries are right next to the fresh berries. And so they're keeping them in the same produce aisle as the other produce items. So in 2024, the company worked with over 40 local producers, and their products were sold to over 500 wholesale customers. So I think that shows just the amount of demand that there is for local food. And I'll turn it over to Clara.
Perfect. Well, our fifth and final case study is focused on Ball's Food Stores, as you can see on the slide here. Founded in 1923, Ball's Food Stores has grown to include 25 stores across the Kansas City metropolitan area more than a century later. Local food was always an important part of the community's or the company's identity from the very beginning, but local sourcing became more logistically complicated as the grocery industry evolved. Large wholesale distribution systems are inaccessible to many local producers who grow smaller volumes of specialty crops, making it more difficult for them to be able to sell their items in grocery stores. So as a result, Ball's Food Stores established a central warehouse so that it could aggregate and distribute local food on its own without relying on its primary wholesaler. Today, the company works with roughly 100 local producers located within a 250-mile radius. And from their central warehouse, Ball's Food Stores distributes local food to their stores, as well as more than 30 stores owned by other retailers in the metro. Next slide, please. So this slide goes into more detail about that key innovation that we were really excited to learn more about, which is Ball's Food Store's central warehouse. Before having this central warehouse, local producers had to coordinate orders with numerous produce managers and then transport their product to various locations across Kansas City. This was inefficient for both the producers as well as being inefficient for the stores. The central warehouse streamlines the process by allowing producers to coordinate and deliver to just one location. Ball's Food Stores does not ask for a minimum quantity from local producers, which allows them to try new products and then adjust as needed. So as you can see on the slide here, the central warehouse has two key functions. First, streamlining the ordering, receiving, and distributing of local food to its stores. And secondly, purchasing bulk quantities of items on sale from their primary wholesaler, which are then stored in the central warehouse to help keep store prices low and add to their competitive advantage. Focusing in on that first function, each year at the end of the growing season, typically in October or November, the Ball's Food Stores team meets with local producers to review sales from the prior year and plan for the week ahead. An informal agreement is developed to include the types of products and estimated weekly quantities that Ball's Food Stores needs to meet the customer demand. This timely planning allows Ball's Food Stores and local producers to adjust seasonally based on historical sales data. So if you're interested, the products in highest demand in 2024 included watermelons, sweet corn, and tomatoes. During the season, when local food products are available, their marketing efforts, which includes the Buy Fresh, Buy Local signage pictured here, which they had to purchase a charter to be able to utilize the slogan and branding of. Their marketing highlights the local food offerings and the benefits of buying local food. Additional marketing materials, including brochures that feature pictures of the local producers who provide the actual local produce for sale, encourage customers to, quote, enjoy the freshest, most delicious locally grown and produced foods from the Kansas City area and support local family farmers thousands of miles fresher, end quote. Importantly, Ball's Food Stores seeks to ensure customers know where local food products are coming from. So they've even hosted Meet the Grower events in their stores to build connections between customers and the people who grow their food. And in 2024, so just last year, the supermarket chain offered products from over 100 local producers, paying $4 million to local producers in Kansas and Missouri, with local food accounting for 20 to 25% of all produce sales during the growing season. So I will pass it back to Ryle.
All right, thank you, Clara. So now that we have learned about the 5 models that we studied in this project, there are a few final takeaways that we'd like to share. So first, we found that when it comes to the business model, there really was no one size fits all in terms of business structure. These 5 models represent a variety of business structures and stakeholders, showing that it depends on the assets of the community and the business leaders involved to determine the right fit and structure for their individual idea and model. We also saw that while there was a need for efficiency to bring some of these models to scale, we also saw that the strength in these models lie in the direct relationships between grocer and producer, and that in some cases, the relationships that were sustained over time allowed and contributed to resilience in the model by allowing the model to withstand unforeseen challenges without wavering in their partnership. We also saw that in different ways, these models were able to highlight strong local collaborations that ensured success and mutual benefit. Things like seasonal planning and marketing efforts highlighted the intentionality of the models and translated into the overall ethos of each of the models that we studied. And then lastly, the financial strategies of these models varied. Some leaned more heavily on loans and grants, and others did not. However, consistently across every model, we saw that a diversity of funds and types of funding were used to allow that model to start up, grow, and expand. So with that, there is so much more to learn from these models. And so we encourage you to visit our webpage and refer to our final report, our comparison chart, as well as the 5 individual case studies that we wrote on the models that we've covered today. And as I mentioned earlier, we are still curating the catalog of innovative local sourcing solutions and encourage you all to continue contributing to that catalog so that we can continue to build the knowledge around different innovative models to get local sourcing into grocery outlets. With that, I think we've set aside some time for Q&A. I know that there were a few questions that came through in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and so we can move over to the Q&A portion of the agenda. There were a couple of questions that came in through the chat, and I think they were already addressed. However, I think we will just reiterate some of the questions here. If you have additional questions, please go ahead and put those in the chat or in the Q&A feature in Zoom, and we will be sure to get to those. So one question was around the total, this is related to Farmacy Marketplace, around the total number of students that had completed that program. Clara, do you want to share anything more about that?
Yeah, so in 2024, 8 producers completed the program. I would have to dig to get a total for the entirety of the program history. But that's what we have in our case study is the number from 2024.
Great. We also saw a question on the, let's see, the Ball's Food Hub, or the Ball's Food Store warehouse. Questions on whether the producers deliver there and from there, who manages the warehouse. Sounds like a food hub. So can you talk a little bit more about that warehouse and why the fact that it is aggregating seemed like an innovation from our perspective here.
For sure. So many producers do deliver their products themselves to the central warehouse. However, for some of the larger farms, sometimes Ball's Food Stores does actually go pick up the products from some producers for a small fee. This is particularly relevant for the Amish and Mennonite communities in Southeast Kansas who lack refrigerated storage and transportation equipment. So during the summer months, Ball's Food Stores will leave 2 53-foot refrigerated trailers at their farm and then pick them back up every other day. And if the season is going well, then that frequency is increased to being picked up daily. Yeah.
And it really is kind of like a food hub. It's just that it's something that they manage, the company manages themselves. The farmers are not managing it. But it's a way for farmers to get their product into a lot of other into a chain grocery store. It can be really difficult for local producers to get their product in a chain grocery store. But Ball's Food Stores is kind of at this sweet spot. The size, I think they have like 25 stores, if I'm not mistaken. So they're still able to manage that on their own and built this warehouse on their own just because they knew that their customers really valued it. And I also want to point out Rachel Schneider with Roland Grocer is here. Hi, Rachel. And Rachel corrected me. With their fair pricing system, it's actually 80% of sales are subsidized. So they are truly, they're really doing the work that they set out to do by having this fair pricing system in their community. So thank you, Rachel.
And there was a follow-on about Rolling Grocer. Is this model sustainable, or are they using grants and other funding for operating capital? And Erica, you can speak to that as well. I see that Samuel responded to share that grants and donors are a key part of that model. But if there's anything else you want to share, please go ahead, Erica.
Yeah, I do know from talking to Rachel that having long-term committed funding is really, really important for Rolling Grocer, and that um, fundraising is a part of their business model. So I don't know if maybe we could, Rachel, if you wanted to speak to any of that, we could we could have you unmute. But yes, the answer to that question is yes, that is an important part of that nonprofit grocery model.
I'm happy to speak to. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, the third tier, which is at 40%, provides income toward the covering of all expenses. So I would say it's a mix and match situation, Erica, mixed. So that's about, I would say 50% comes from a circle of donors plus a grant, and 50% comes from the sales in the actual retail pricing, 40% margin.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right, let's shift gears a little bit here. There's a comment in the chat about trying to understand the key market players in each situation and how they differ or show similarities across the models. And the first thing I would say, and then I'll point it to our team, the first thing I would say is that this is why we developed the comparison chart, because we felt like it would be helpful to see each of these and where they are similar, where they differ. So if you look at the link that we just put in the chat for the comparisons chart the innovations, the location, geography served, as well as some of the business characteristics, the business model, financial strategy, so on and so forth. So I think that will be a helpful way to review or to respond to your question. And then for now, I'll see, does anyone have any takeaways from the RGI team they'd like to share as far as this question in terms of key market players in each model, how they differ or are similar?
Um, just to chime in that I think the context really sets some of them apart. And I think that was spoken to a little bit when we went through each case study, but I think that, may be obvious, but just want to reiterate that the context that they're operating in and located in really affects the market players and how they're able to be successful with the specific model.
Yeah, and I also think with a lot of these models, maybe not all of them, but I this tended to be this became a theme that a lot of these models were really surrounded by a lot of local producers, like Farm Runners is in the North Fork Valley, which has a high concentration of organic growers. Um, I know there's a ton of local production happening around Rolling Grocer as well. Michigan has, they grow 300 commodities in that state. So that I think was also very helpful for some of these models. And like they were able to do the work because that production was already happening.
So another comment I would add is that we mentioned the call for innovative models, where we received 40 examples of innovative local sourcing and grocery, and from across the country, and then from there found these 5. A couple things that were represented in that catalog included food hubs and included cooperatives and included the farm stop model. And those three models were items that, in consultation with USDA, we decided we would not dig into because there are other resources related to that type of business structure and that type of business model. But that does not dismiss the importance of those models in this conversation. And that's why the catalog that includes that variety of models is really important as kind of a home base for all of local innovation that's going towards getting local product into grocery stores. I see a question here on financial health of each of these organizations, particularly given the continual challenges over the past 5 years. I'm curious if anyone has something they'd like to share here in terms of how you characterize the financial health of these 5 models. Some, just to start, some were well established. Ball's Food Store comes to mind. Some are relatively new in their presence in their community. And so I think that was chosen on purpose to try to see what characteristics we might see in a variety of models from different stages of business. Erica or Clara, do you have anything else you'd want to add on characterizing financial health of these models?
Yeah, it's really hard to, I guess, answer that question because we don't know like what the current situation is for some of them, but just in talking with them, like the businesses that had been around, started 10 years ago, had seen, an upward trajectory and were able to expand, maybe it wasn't a big burst, but it was expansion over time. And so, yeah, I think that overall, my takeaway is there's a lot of demand for local food, and they hit on something that they realized was really important in their communities and were able to fill a gap. So.
I would also say, to respond to that even the models that were longer standing, there were instances where you saw that the model itself pivoted to address to respond or address the demand for local sourcing more effectively. So, we saw that there was change in the model as the demand changed or as efficiencies increased, as more local producers became connected to the model. And so even a long-standing example showed that there was room to be continually innovating and adapting based on existing demand.
And one other thing that I wanted to bring up, this may be really obvious. The title of this whole project is Local Sourcing Innovation in Independent Groceries. So there's obviously we're looking at local sourcing in grocery stores. Some of the models that we looked at were not themselves grocery stores, but worked with grocery stores. So farm to freezer, food manufacturing company, Farm Runners is a distributor, and what am I missing? But they weren't all grocery stores, and yet the um, the grocery store was really paramount for those other models to succeed. Um, Independent grocery stores are often a lot more flexible compared to chain grocery stores and are willing to try something new or willing to work with the new business. And so that was something else that came up. It was just in terms of increasing the local food system. Local and independent grocery stores need to be players, and need to be a part of that.
Great. I see a question here on a little bit more of the logistics regarding chain of product ownership and product liability in the distribution aspects of these models. It looks like Samuel and Clara both responded. Would either one of you like to elaborate?
Yeah, I can just reiterate what I shared in the chat, especially for people who are watching the recording that might not have access to the chat. For Ball's Food Stores in particular, farmers who sell to Ball's Food Stores have to be GAP certified, and then also must have a $1 million liability insurance policy.
Thank you. I see also a question here on labor and operations. So how were wages incorporated into consideration of these models? Was there anything that stood out related to labor and operations of these models?
Yeah, I put this in the chat, but just to expand, something that I didn't mention is that so Ball's Food Stores has 25 store locations, and they're charged quarterly to cover the operational costs of the warehouse. And that includes covering the labor of the 31 employees who staff the warehouse itself. So that would be one instance where labor and operations are considered in their financial analysis and modeling.
I will say that in the case of Farm to Freezer, they originally, when they started in 2014, had goodwill employees kind of subsidize that labor. And as they grew and expanded, they needed more consistent labor, so that they turned to a more regular wage model. But it began out as very much a volunteer program to get skills training.
Yeah, and with both farm runners enrolling grocer, labor was one of the goals that they continue to work through is just how to pay people enough and retain the people that they have, and just dealing with really true just in retail in general. So it's not unique to these business. That's just us in the retail industry in general is for retail workers and have problems of retention.
Thanks, Samuel. I don't know if others are having trouble, but you were kind of going in and out there. So one other thought that we haven't really covered is how technology played a role in some of these models. So I know Farm Runners comes to mind as an example where there was a particular technology platform they used to coordinate with their producers. But like we said earlier, the relationships that existed with the producers was really key. And so kind of balancing the need for technology and the need for those individual relationships. So that was one kind of interesting aspect that we noticed from this project. Is there anything else related to technology to highlight about these models?
Yeah, and with farm runners, that's kind of an interesting example that you bring up, because the relationship with farmers is really core to their mission, and they created their business so that they could serve farmers specifically. And as soon as they went to an online system, which made the ordering process far more efficient. You know, before they were calling farmers to see what products they had, they were calling customers to see what they wanted. Now the farmers and the customers could do this on an online platform, streamlined it immensely. It also meant that they didn't have quite as much one-on-one connection with the farmers. So that's something that they're working out right now, and have a goal to visit all of the farms that they work with. So it's just, yeah, the relationship piece is, it certainly takes more work, but it's also just, it's what makes local food systems what they are. And local food systems, I think, just because it's on a smaller scale, they do take more time, they take more relationships. And so, yeah, it's kind of that give and take there.
I think some of the point of sale systems also speak to that and their ability. Erica could probably speak more to like rolling grocer. I think there was a component with the point of sale system and being able to implement that fair pricing system. You know, if with some of the programs that offer programs like Double Up Food Bucks, the point of sale system becomes important. It's something that we hear about with outside of this research project, the grocers that the Rural Grocery Initiative works with. And so that's another technology component as well.
All right. There was a question in the chat about food hubs, and we included a link to a recent publication that USDA issued around food hub operations that I think was just came out in earlier this summer. Let's see, I think we may have covered most of the questions here. So I think we'll close out with one final question to the RGI team in terms of just any final takeaways that you want to share about the models that you covered, and sort of thoughts on how you think these case studies can support other models or other local sourcing initiatives in the future. So any thoughts on that, Erica or Clara?
Yeah, well, I think that all of these models have, you know, similar goals, but they have really tailored their specific solution to their specific community. So I think that's like a big takeaway, that it's nothing is ever going to be one size fits all, and that's really it's really important. But there are still a lot of really wonderful lessons learned in all of the case studies, and hopefully as people read through the case studies, they can see what worked for some of these businesses, see what didn't work. We don't, you know, hopefully, if you're working on a project in your own community, you can avoid making some of the same mistakes. And, you know, figure out what really works well for you. I think just the community, like Roland Grocer, for instance, did so much groundwork before they got started. I think that's hugely important for a lot of these types of projects. So I would encourage everyone to do that. And yeah, do your research. Hopefully these case studies will help you.
I think Erica gave some really good takeaways there. Another one I'd add is that it was really clear, you know, from the case studies that I got to interact closely with, as well as even just from reviewing the contributions to our local sourcing innovations catalog, that there are a lot of people out there that have a real passion for this work. And I think that passion is really important to making it happen. I know that's coming through in some of the chat comments. I know this is an area that many of you do work in. And so I'm personally just really excited by the amount of people who are passionate and excited about this area and increasing access to local foods. So I think that's an important part of the work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for sharing. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up here. I did see a question to see these key findings one more time before we wrapped up, so I'll just share that slide briefly, and also mention that in addition to sending out the recording, we will also send out the slides or have the slides posted on our website. So if you want to refer back to anything that was shared earlier, you should be able to do that. So the last thing here is a thank you for joining us and a quick poll to share some feedback on this webinar. So you should be able to see that poll. While you are responding, I'm going to just shift gears slightly to mention that the Rural Grocery Initiative will be hosting the National Rural Grocery Summit in May of 2026. This is a biennial event that moves around the country and in my mind is the who's who in rural grocery. So if you have interest in this, we invite you to join us. We are partnering with North Dakota Association of Rural Electric Co-ops, as well as the University of Minnesota's Extension's Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships to host this event in Fargo next year. And the call for proposals is currently open. So if you are working on innovative local sourcing models for grocery or other aspects of rural grocery, please consider submitting a proposal and helping to shape the agenda for the National Rural Grocery Summit. That call for proposals is due in about 2 weeks on October 15th. So with that, I think we will sign off for today. Thank you all so much for joining us and for listening in as we highlighted local sourcing innovations in independent and locally owned groceries. Thanks, everyone.